Hey, welcome or welcome back, as the case may be, to Facts and Firearms. I'm Mas Ayub, and like anybody in this business, we constantly get asked, what's the best way to practice to become good with a gun? And we all have slightly different answers, but most of those answers tend to be functional. Personally, I go with a mix of practice. Certainly dry fire, the empty gun pointed at a safe direction. So it's something that could absorb the most powerful bullet that could come out of that gun if somehow it got in there. You can do everything from draw from a speed holster, draw from concealment. You can practice the draw to gunpoint, which most people should practice more than they do because that's your typical profile of an actual armed self-defense incident. And finally, draws to the shot. Obviously, you can't do recoil recovery with no recoil. You can find practice aids for your gun that will simulate recoil. The, um, the key basics of sight index, a good stance, and control of the trigger. Control of the trigger is really the heart of the beast. Is going to get you a long way towards where you need to go. For resources on dry fire, two authors I'd recommend to you. Excuse me. World champion rifle shooter Lanny Bassam, Bassham, and his excellent book, With Winning in Mind. This was a man who was stationed in places where all he could do for a year was dry fire, and at the end of that year, live fire, won world championships. And Ben Steger, Stoeger. He has put more thought into dry fire protocols, particularly with a handgun, but also with a rifle, than anyone else I'm aware of. Today we have dry fire aids that were undreamed of in my younger days when I had to shoot against the professionals on the pro tour. The beam hit, it seems like it's been around forever. Back in the 1990s, my younger daughter, being in school, didn't have much live fire time, but she practiced on the beam hit. She went out to the national championships, parent-child, and in the National Junior Championships, she and I were able to win parent-child champion team in her age division, mostly through the practice with the beam hit. Also, with some damn good coaching from two good friends of mine, I'd like to give a shout out to Sam and Bonnie Young. We have stuff like today the Mantis X system, which is now in multiple generations and is absolutely excellent for feedback on everything from your ability to track between targets to your hits combined with your speed, etc., etc. And it's definitely worth the investment. My wife in particular loves hers. Understudy guns. If you're shooting heavy caliber guns or guns that are just too damned expensive to feed, 22 of the same general configuration is going to get down everything but the recoil control. Similarly, if you need to practice in your backyard and you live in an urban or suburban area, pellet guns, air guns with similar manuals of arms and similar configuration. They won't be a total practice package, but they'll be a significant part of it. For competition, I think competition is the best practice for the moment of truth because it forces you to shoot under pressure. It puts you in the environment of the this is it mode, and running a gun under pressure becomes the norm. Guys I talk to, master gunfighters like Bill Allard from the New York City Stakeout Squad, Jim Cirillo from the New York City Stakeout Squad, those men were national champion shooters in competition. And when they needed their guns, the shooting part they could put on autopilot, and the conscious part was free to make the decision, do I have to kill this man or do I not? Each of them put a lot of bad guys on the ground. Neither of them ever got in trouble over it. And both of them were strong, enthusiastic in their recommendations that anybody carrying a gun for real should compete. Compete where? IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association, is the concealed carry sport. Almost all the draws are done from concealment or occasionally from a staged position, like on the ground where it might have been knocked from your hand, or having to pull it out of the drawer in a prop desk in a given scenario. They also emphasize use of cover, tactical reloads, speed reloads, things of that nature. For pure athleticism, run with a gun, shoot fast, and get decent hits, USPSA, the United States Practical Shooting Association, the American arm of IPSC, the International Practical Shooting Confederation. You'll get some running in, you'll get some gunning in, and you'll become confident with your pistol. Or your pistol caliber carbine, as the case may be. And you'll find the same with 2-gun and 3-gun matches that encompass handgun and the various long guns, the carbine and the shotgun. Steel plate shooting. The steel challenge format is fun, it's excellent, it's not particularly strenuous for us aging cripples because there's not a lot of running. And falling plate matches that you'll find at a lot of local gun clubs where there's no running at all, it's just stand there in a low ready position, and whoever cleans the plate rack first wins. There's a lot that you can do with that. If you shoot a team match, for example, it encourages you to use proper team tactics. If I'm shooting with a partner and we've got 6 falling plates, if the plan is I shoot the 3 on my side and he or she shoots the 3 on theirs, if one of them misses, there's no fallback and there's another target left up. The clock is still running and we're going to lose. Translate that to the street. If you're counting on your partner to neutralize an entire sector of threat and your partner goes down, you are 100% vulnerable to the threat on that side. So that's why if I'm shooting a 2-man team on plates, I do exactly what I'd want to be doing if up against multiple opponents with my partner. The one on the right's going to go right to left, the one on the left's going to go left to right, and keep on going, and then when they've got shots into all of them, come back and bat cleanup as necessary. Now you may fire a shot that misses an 8-inch steel plate. You're unlikely at the typical distance of 10, 15 yards, 11 yards in a Glock match. If you miss the plate, your shot was most unlikely to have missed the entire opponent. You probably at least done something to distract and disable him, while your partner in the intersecting field of fire is coming in to finish up, and you're finishing up anybody or anything that he's left standing. For a good example of that, let's run a video of me shooting two-person plates with my friend and training partner, Phil Wong. The right one doesn't get him, the left one will. What was the time?
3:19.
That's better. We'll take that.
PPC is hard to find these days, police pistol combat. Now, a lot of folks think, ooh, that's an old FUD game. The time allowed is way too long. In competition, the targets are way too unrealistic. You've got a little tiny oval that's the tiebreaker X ring. Around that, a slightly bigger oval that's a 10 ring. Then the 9 ring, then the 8 ring, and the 7 ring. And anything outside the 7 ring, including the head, is 0 value. Saying, wait a minute, I shoot my opponent here in the head and I get 0 value? Yeah, because the game is not testing your tactical anatomy knowledge. The game is testing your marksmanship, and you missed what you were aiming at by 1.5 feet. But it emphasizes accuracy, and a good 40% of it, depending how that particular match is laid out, is going to be shot from cover positions where you're actually braced perhaps behind a vertical barricade that simulates the corner of a building, or shooting from a kneeling or sitting or prone position that would also simulate cover. And each of those, it's not the totality of what you need for self-defense shooting, obviously, but it's some ingredients in the recipe. My own favorite match of all is the bowling pin matches, and I think I've mentioned that here on this channel and elsewhere. Now, the bowling pins, you're shooting regulation heavy wooden 10 pins off a table, and you've got to hit them hard enough to get them as far as 3 feet back before they fall, and they're counted as being out of the game. So you need speed, power, and accuracy. The three elements that Colonel Jeff Cooper said correctly, I think, were essential in a gunfight. Now, can't you say, well, I'm getting the same thing on a falling plate rack? Yes and no. The falling plate is either going to go down when you hit it or not. The bowling pin, if you've hit it center, should go off the table. But if you hit it just a little bit off center, instead of going back, it's going to go sideways. It's going to go down on its side, and now it's going to be much harder to shoot off that table, particularly if its head or base are pointed toward you and you have a much smaller target to shoot at. It might be still rolling, just like an opponent you shoot might duck to an unexpected position, perhaps even partially behind cover where you have to move to get an angle to shoot him, might still be rolling when you need to shoot him. Is a bowling pin anatomically correct? Actually, yes. The next time you're in a bowling alley, pick up a bowling pin and hold it right here. The base of the pin is about level with the xiphoid process, the solar plexus. It widens to about the same size at about the same point as a human heart, and the neck comes up and truncates about where the human cervical spine would be. So a hit on a bowling pin anywhere, if you got that same hit on a malignant human opponent, would probably solve your anti-personnel needs for the moment. And they're fun. The more fun these games are, the more you're going to practice them, the more repetitions you're going to build, the more you're going to have what we colloquially, if technically and correctly, call long-term muscle memory. And as Cirillo and Allard said, be able to put the shooting part on autopilot so the critical decision-making part can be focused on to make sure you're doing the right thing when you send death towards something that you believe is trying to murder you. Another thing if you can't get to matches, and I understand that, not everybody's life has time for 3 nights a week at the dojo or a day every weekend on the shooting range. Well, I get it. But when you can shoot, if you can, shoot with a friend, shoot with a buddy, and compete. Make a side bet. Okay, the loser buys dinner for the winner. Loser buys a box of ammo for the winner, something like that. Accustom yourself that every time you're shooting, something rides on it. That you'll be rewarded for good performance, you'll be penalized for bad performance. Now, if you have a friend that he's way better than you or you're way better than him, shoot with a handicap. Pick whatever course of fire you're going to do. Each of you try it a couple of times and figure out what's your average score. If, for example, it's a 60-shot qualification with 300 points possible, and your score is an average of 299, and his is an average of 240. Well, if you shoot like that head on, he's going to lose interest quickly, saying, what the hell am I doing? I can't compete against the shark over here. You're going to be thinking, ho hum, this is so easy, gee, maybe I'll shoot it one-handed or with my eyes closed, and it's not going to make either of you any better. But if one of you shoots 240, why don't you subtract that from 299 and give the difference to him as the handicap? Because he's got a whole lot more room to improve than you have. And he now realizes it's in striking distance. With my X number of points handicap added to my score, I can beat Mr. Gunshark over here and take his bet hello. And you're going to be thinking, holy crap, he's right. I got to focus in hard on this and do my best, because if I don't shoot a 300, I'm going to have to give money and be seen as the loser to the guy I shoot better than. And it'll put you both shooting at the best you possibly can. And if you don't have anybody that you can shoot with, shoot against yourself. Now, what I mean by that, let me give you an example. In 1979, they announced the first Bianchi Cup. In its original iteration, they were calling it the Wimbledon of pistol shooting, and you could only apply to shoot in the match if you had won a state championship or higher. Well, there were several folks in my state that have won state championships or higher, but I was the only one who was committed to going. I mean, it was a new thing, and you know, you had to travel to Columbia, Missouri to do it. So I basically had nobody to practice with. We didn't have the electronic gunshot timers, or at least I didn't at the time, not late 1970s. So I got a list of what the course of fire would be, took a tape recorder, read the commands in with a watch and a whistle, went out to the range. We couldn't buy the targets. The targets had just been designed. We had diagrams of them with measurements. So I took some old beer cases, took a magic marker, and drew in the scoring rings. Set them out there, ran with the tape recorder, shooting live fire. And I made a deal with my wife. I said, you score my targets when I get home. Anything less than 10-point value, I give you $1 per point that I dropped. She came out of it with a new kitchen appliance, but I came out of it meeting my goal, which was coming in the top 15 of what was then billed as the best in the world. Because that practice by myself had conditioned me. When I see this ugly, damn little tombstone-shaped target, it's going to cost me money if I don't have my feces cohesive, do everything right, and put those holes dead center in the damn thing. Well, that's about it for what I can offer you for practice. Practice makes perfect, but I'll tell you my best advice, never practice with a gun again if you're serious about this. And when I say that, it goes to what is the definition of practice. Often practice turns into just getting out there and we're turning money into noise and creating empty casings and not really building and ingraining and improving a particular skill set. I'm not going to say don't shoot. I'm going to say where before you practiced, now you want to train. You want to have a specific goal every time you press that trigger and launch a bullet. You go to that range thinking, I will do X score within X frame of time. And if I do not, I will have diagnosed the reason why I didn't. And I'll be on my way to fixing it. And all of that is positive. Don't practice, train. Training is goal focused. Okay. Do not focus on for you, don't be actually focusing on the goal. For you, focus on the tasks that are necessary for you to achieve that goal. If you do that, you'll be getting your maximum dollar from your practice. Thanks for watching. You're all welcome to come and train with us. Go to masadayubgroup.com to see what we have to offer and where we have to offer it around the country. We hope you'll subscribe, and we'd like you to ring the bell so we can notify you of upcoming content. Thank you for watching.